I was scrolling through Facebook on a Sunday afternoon looking for a recipe someone had posted in my church group when I saw the photo. My son Marcus standing in a tuxedo with his arm around a woman in a white wedding dress, both of them beaming at the camera, and the caption read, "Best day of our lives, just married," posted by someone named Rachel Morrison, who I'd never heard of. And I stared at that screen for what felt like an eternity as my brain tried to process what I was seeing. My son, my only child, had gotten married, and I'd had no idea it was even happening. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through the album, dozens of photos showing a beautiful outdoor ceremony, a reception with at least 80 guests, Marcus's college friends, people I recognized from his work, even his father's sister Patricia, who I thought I was close with. All of them smiling and celebrating, while I sat in my living room in Charleston, having spent that entire Saturday doing laundry and watching television, completely unaware that my son was getting married 3 hours away without me. I kept looking for some explanation, some indication that maybe I'd been sick and couldn't attend. Maybe there was a reason, but there was nothing. Just photo after photo of a wedding I hadn't been invited to, hadn't been told about, didn't even know was being planned. And in that moment, I felt something inside me crack as I realized my son had deliberately erased me from the most important day of his life. My name is Ann Williams, and I'm 72 years old. I live alone in Charleston, South Carolina, where I raised my son Marcus after my husband Thomas died when Marcus was just 15 years old. Marcus and I had always been close, more so I thought. After Thomas died, it had been just the two of us. I'd worked double shifts as a nurse to put Marcus through college. I'd supported his dreams, celebrated his achievements, been there for every milestone. We talked regularly, or at least we had until about 8 months ago when the calls became less frequent. Marcus had said he was busy with work, with life, and I'd understood. He was 36 years old, building his career as an engineer in Charlotte. Of course he was busy. He'd mentioned a girlfriend named Rachel a few times, said they were getting serious. I'd asked to meet her, suggested they come to Charleston for a weekend, offered to drive to Charlotte. Marcus had always had an excuse. Rachel was busy with work. The timing wasn't right. Maybe next month. I'd been patient. I'd figured I'd meet her eventually, probably at their engagement party or when they started planning a wedding. I never imagined I'd meet her by seeing wedding photos on Facebook after the marriage had already happened. If you've ever discovered that you've been deliberately excluded from a major life event by someone you love, someone you sacrificed for, someone you thought would always include you in their life, you know the particular devastation I felt. It's not just hurt, it's betrayal. It's the rewriting of your entire relationship. I called Marcus immediately. My hands were still shaking as I dialed. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, Mom?" "Marcus," my voice came out strangled. "I just saw photos on Facebook." "You got married?" Silence. Then, "Oh, you saw those? You got married and you didn't tell me? You didn't invite me?" "Mom, it was a small ceremony, very last minute. We decided to just do it quickly instead of planning a big thing. There were 80 people there, Marcus. I counted. Your friends from college, people from work, your Aunt Patricia. That's not small. That's not last minute. It felt small to us. Don't lie to me. I can see the photos. There was a professional photographer, a caterer, a sit-down dinner, a DJ. You planned this, Marcus. You planned an entire wedding and deliberately didn't tell me about it. Mom, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You got married without me. I'm your mother. I raised you by myself after your father died. I worked myself to exhaustion to put you through college, and you couldn't even tell me you were getting married? This wasn't about you. It absolutely was about me. You made a choice to exclude me from the most important day of your life. That was a deliberate choice. Why, Marcus? Why would you do that?" Another pause. Rachel didn't want a big family presence. She wanted to keep it simple. Rachel didn't want me there? Your bride, who I've never met, decided I shouldn't come to my own son's wedding? It's more complicated than that. Then explain it to me. Make me understand how you could do this. I can't talk about this right now. I'm at work. You were at work on your wedding day too, apparently, since you certainly weren't telling your mother you were getting married. Mom, I'll call you later. Marcus, don't you dare hang up on me. But he did. The line went dead, and I sat there holding my phone, tears streaming down my face, feeling more alone than I'd felt since Thomas died. Over the next few days, I tried calling Marcus repeatedly. Most calls went to voicemail. The few times he answered, he was brief, deflecting, saying he was busy with work, with settling in as a married man, that we'd talk soon. But we didn't talk, and I needed to understand what had happened, so I started investigating. I looked up Rachel Morrison on Facebook. Her profile was mostly private, but I could see some photos, some basic information. She was 32, worked in marketing, had gone to UNC. She looked polished, professional, beautiful. I also noticed something else. In all her photos, there was no mention of family. No parents, no siblings, no throwback photos from childhood. It was as if Rachel had sprung into existence as an adult. I expanded my search. I looked at the wedding photos more carefully, examining the guest list. I recognized Marcus's college roommate, several co-workers, some friends from his gym. And I recognized Aunt Patricia, Thomas's sister, who I'd stayed close with after his death. I called Patricia immediately. Patricia, did you go to Marcus's wedding? There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Anne, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you weren't invited until I got there and didn't see you. I was shocked. You didn't ask Marcus where I was? I did. He said you'd decided not to come, that it was too difficult for you emotionally. He told people I chose not to attend my own son's wedding? That's what he said. Anne, if I'd known the truth, I never would have gone. I assumed there was some family issue I wasn't aware of, but I thought it was your choice. It wasn't my choice. I didn't even know there was a wedding until I saw photos on Facebook 2 days later. Oh my God. Anne, I'm so sorry. That's cruel. Why would Marcus do that? He said Rachel didn't want family there, but Patricia, there were 80 people at that wedding. This wasn't about keeping it small. This was about keeping me away specifically. Over the following week, I talked to several other people who'd attended the wedding. Each conversation revealed more lies Marcus had told. He'd told his college friends I was too ill to travel. He'd told his coworkers I was dealing with personal issues and preferred not to attend. He'd told his gym friends I had conflicting commitments. Each lie was different, but the effect was the same. No one questioned my absence because they'd been given a plausible explanation. Marcus had systematically lied to cover up the fact that he hadn't invited his own mother to his wedding. But why? What had I done to deserve this? What had Rachel said to convince Marcus to exclude me? I decided I needed to meet Rachel and understand what kind of person could convince a man to erase his mother from his wedding. I drove to Charlotte on a Thursday afternoon. I didn't tell Marcus I was coming. I went straight to his house, an address I found on a piece of mail he'd sent me months ago. I knocked on the door at 4:30, hoping to catch them after work. Rachel answered. She was even more beautiful in person, tall, blonde, impeccably dressed even in casual clothes. Can I help you? I'm Ann Williams. Marcus's mother. Her expression shifted from polite to cold in an instant. Oh. I'd like to talk to you and Marcus. May I come in? Marcus isn't home from work yet. Then I'll talk to you. You're the reason I wasn't invited to my son's wedding, aren't you? I think you should leave. I think you owe me an explanation. You've never met me. You know nothing about me. And yet you convinced Marcus to exclude me from his wedding. Why? Mrs. Williams, Marcus's relationship with you is his business. I didn't force him to do anything. He made his own choices. Based on what? What did you tell him about me? I told him the truth, that you're controlling, that you'd try to take over the wedding planning, that you'd make everything about yourself instead of about us. Marcus agreed that it would be easier if you weren't involved. I felt like I'd been slapped. Controlling? I've never tried to control Marcus's life. I encouraged him to be independent, to make his own choices. You worked yourself to exhaustion to put him through college, and you never let him forget it. You guilt-tripped him constantly about sacrifices you made. You made him feel like he owed you his entire life. That's not true. I worked hard because I loved him, because I wanted him to have opportunities. And you made sure he knew exactly how much you'd sacrificed. Every phone call, every conversation, you found ways to remind him what you'd given up for him. That's manipulation, Mrs. Williams. And Marcus finally realized he didn't have to live under that burden anymore. Marcus told you this? That I manipulated him? He didn't have to tell me. I could see it. The way you called all the time, the way you expected him to visit constantly, the way you made him feel guilty for living his own life. I helped him see that he deserved freedom from that. You isolated him from his mother. I freed him from an unhealthy relationship. There's a difference. I stood on that doorstep looking at this woman who'd convinced my son I was toxic, and I realized something. She wasn't going to admit any wrongdoing. In her mind, she'd rescued Marcus from a controlling mother. I'd like to speak to Marcus when he gets home. He doesn't want to see you. Let him tell me that himself. Mrs. Williams, you need to leave. If you don't, I'll call the police. I left. But as I drove back to Charleston, I wasn't crying. I was thinking. Rachel had painted me as controlling and manipulative. She'd convinced Marcus that excluding me from his wedding was justified. She'd isolated him from me while making him think it was his own choice. But she'd also made a mistake. She'd shown her hand. She'd revealed that this wasn't about Marcus's genuine feelings. It was about her need to control his relationships. I needed to prove that, and I had an idea of how. I spent the next 2 weeks researching Rachel Morrison. I hired a private investigator named Sarah Chen who specialized in background checks. What Sarah found was illuminating. Rachel Morrison wasn't her real name. She'd legally changed it 6 years ago from Rachel Hartley. Before that, she'd been engaged once before, at age 26, to a man named David Chen, no relation to Sarah. I tracked down David Chen through LinkedIn. He was now married with children living in Virginia. I called him and explained who I was. David, I know this is unusual, but I'm trying to understand something about Rachel Morrison, formerly Rachel Hartley. You were engaged to her once? Yes, 6 years ago. We never made it to the wedding, though. What happened? There was a long pause. Rachel had issues with my family. She didn't like my mother, said she was too involved in our relationship. She started making me choose between seeing my family and keeping her happy. Eventually, she gave me an ultimatum: cut off my mother or she'd leave. What did you do? I chose my mother. Rachel was furious. She'd convinced herself that my mom was toxic, controlling, trying to ruin our relationship. But my mom was just a mom, normal, loving, involved in a healthy way. Rachel couldn't stand that I had close relationships with anyone besides her. Did Rachel have family of her own? No. Her parents died when she was young. She was raised by an aunt who she didn't get along with. I think she resented people who had good family relationships. She saw closeness as control. This was the pattern. Rachel isolated her partners from their families by convincing them their families were toxic, and she'd done it before to David. Now she was doing it to Marcus. I thanked David for his time and continued investigating. Sarah found 2 other ex-boyfriends of Rachel's. Both reported similar patterns. Rachel would start out charming, then gradually convince them that their families were problems. Both relationships had ended when the men refused to cut off their families. Marcus was the first one who'd actually done it, the first one who'd chosen Rachel over his family. I had evidence of a pattern. Now I needed to decide what to do with it. I could send Marcus all the information and hope he'd see the truth. But Rachel had her hooks in deep. She'd probably convince him I was lying, making things up to destroy their marriage. I needed a different approach, something that would make the truth undeniable. I decided to write a letter. Not to Marcus, but to the people who'd attended his wedding, the 80 guests who'd celebrated while I sat home unaware my son was getting married. I composed it carefully. Dear friends and family of Marcus Williams, my name is Ann Williams. I'm Marcus's mother. Many of you may have wondered why I wasn't at Marcus's wedding, or perhaps Marcus and Rachel gave you an explanation for my absence. I'm writing to tell you the truth. I wasn't at the wedding because I wasn't invited. In fact, I wasn't told the wedding was happening. I learned about my son's marriage by seeing photos on Facebook 2 days after the ceremony. I'm not writing to ask for your sympathy or to create drama. I'm writing because I believe truth matters. Rachel Morrison, formerly Rachel Hartley, has a documented pattern of isolating romantic partners from their families. Her previous engagement ended when her fiancé refused to cut off his mother. That relationship, and 2 others I verified, followed the same pattern. Rachel enters the relationship, gradually convinces her partner that their family is toxic or controlling, and eventually demands they choose between her and their family. Marcus chose her. He excluded me from his wedding, lied to guests about why I wasn't there, and has since minimized contact with me. I'm sharing this information not to hurt Marcus or Rachel, but to plant a seed of truth. Some of you may have witnessed concerning behavior. Some of you may have seen warning signs. I'm asking you to pay attention. When isolation masquerades as independence, when cutting off family is presented as freedom, when love requires erasing the people who raised you, that's not healthy. That's control. I hope Marcus finds his way back to truth eventually. Until then, I want those who care about him to know what really happened. Sincerely, Ann Williams. I attach documentation, David Chen's testimony, evidence of Rachel's name change, screenshots of the lies Marcus had told about why I wasn't at the wedding. Then I mailed it to 50 of the wedding guests whose addresses I could find. I posted it publicly on Facebook, tagging several people who'd attended the wedding. The response was immediate and explosive. Within hours, people were calling Marcus, asking questions. Patricia called me crying, apologizing for believing Marcus's lies. Marcus's college roommate sent me a message saying he'd suspected something was wrong. Several people commented on my Facebook post sharing their own observations, how Rachel had monopolized Marcus's time at the wedding, how she'd seemed controlling, how Marcus had seemed different, more withdrawn. Marcus called me at midnight, his voice shaking with rage. What the hell did you do? You sent letters to everyone from my wedding? You posted that garbage on Facebook? I posted the truth, Marcus. Everything in that letter is documented and verifiable. You're trying to destroy my marriage. I'm trying to help you see that you've been manipulated. Rachel has done this before, Marcus. She isolates her partners from their families. It's a pattern. You're lying. You're making this up because you can't accept that I chose to have a wedding without you. Did you choose it, Marcus? Or did Rachel convince you that excluding me was necessary? Did you wake up one day and decide your mother, who raised you alone, who sacrificed everything for you, shouldn't be at your wedding? Or did Rachel plant that idea and nurture it until you believed it was yours? Rachel loves me. She wants what's best for me. What's best for you doesn't include erasing your family, Marcus. Love doesn't require you to cut off everyone who came before. That's not love, that's control. I'm done with this conversation, and I'm done with you. He hung up. I sat in my quiet house and cried, not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I knew it might be years before Marcus saw the truth, if he ever did. But I'd planted seeds. I'd made sure people who cared about Marcus knew the truth. I'd documented Rachel's pattern, and I'd refused to stay silent while being erased from my son's life. Over the following months, I heard through Patricia and others that Marcus and Rachel's marriage was struggling. Rachel had become increasingly controlling, monitoring who Marcus talked to, isolating him from friends who'd questioned his excluding me from the wedding, demanding he cut off anyone who took my side. Several of Marcus's friends had distanced themselves from Rachel. His college roommate had confronted him about the pattern of isolation. Marcus had defended Rachel, but the seeds of doubt were growing. About 8 months after the wedding, I received a letter from Marcus, not a phone call, a handwritten letter. Mom, I don't know how to start this except to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for excluding you from my wedding. I'm sorry for lying about why you weren't there. I'm sorry for believing Rachel when she said you were toxic and controlling. I've spent the last few months thinking about everything that's happened. About the letter you sent to wedding guests, about what David Chen told people when they contacted him, about the pattern Rachel has of isolating people from their families. I've also been thinking about my actual childhood, my actual relationship with you. And the truth is, you weren't controlling. You were supportive. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give me opportunities. You never guilted me. You just loved me. Rachel convinced me that your love was manipulation, that your calls were controlling, that your desire to be involved in my life was toxic. And I believed her because I wanted to believe I'd found someone who truly understood me. But she didn't understand me. She understood how to isolate me. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. I excluded you from the most important day of my life. I lied about you to people you've known for decades. I chose a woman I'd known for months over the mother who'd raised me. I'm writing to tell you that you were right about Rachel, about the pattern, about everything. Rachel and I are separated. She's moved out. When I started questioning her control, when I pushed back against her demands that I cut off more people, she left. She said if I couldn't fully commit to her, she didn't want to be with me. And I realized that fully committing meant erasing everyone I loved except her. That's not marriage. That's imprisonment. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I understand if this apology means nothing after what I did. But I needed you to know you were right, and I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Marcus. I read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of vindication, but tears of grief for the time we'd lost, for the pain we'd both endured. I called Marcus. He answered immediately, his voice uncertain. Mom? I got your letter. I meant every word. Marcus, I forgive you, not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. But because I love you and I can see that you were manipulated by someone who knew exactly how to exploit your desire for independence. I should have seen it. Maybe, but Rachel is skilled at what she does. She found your vulnerabilities and used them. That's on her, not you. Can we rebuild our relationship? Yes, but Marcus, it's going to take time. You hurt me deeply. You excluded me from your wedding, lied about me, chose someone else over me. That doesn't just heal overnight. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. Over the next year, Marcus and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. He drove to Charleston every few weeks. We had long conversations about what had happened, about how Rachel had manipulated him, about the red flags he'd missed. He finalized his divorce from Rachel 8 months after their separation. The divorce was contentious. Rachel tried to claim she'd been blindsided, that Marcus had changed, that he was the one who'd become controlling. But the evidence of her pattern, the testimony from her ex-partners, the documentation I'd compiled, it all painted a clear picture. The judge granted the divorce on Marcus's terms. Marcus also reconnected with friends he'd pushed away during his marriage to Rachel. He apologized to his college roommate, to his gym friends, to everyone he'd isolated himself from. And he made a public Facebook post. A year ago, I got married without inviting my mother. I told lies about why she wasn't there. I let someone convince me that my loving, supportive mother was toxic and controlling. I was wrong, completely, devastatingly wrong. My mother, Ann Williams, raised me alone after my father died. She worked double shifts to put me through college. She supported every dream I had, and I repaid her by excluding her from my wedding and lying about her to our community. She had every right to write me off forever. Instead, she fought for the truth. She documented the pattern of manipulation I was caught in. She planted seeds of reality that eventually helped me see what was happening. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. Thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for fighting for me even when I pushed you away. To everyone else, pay attention to patterns. When someone isolates you from everyone you love, that's not love. That's control. When someone who's always been supportive is suddenly painted as toxic, investigate why. And when someone who's always been supportive is suddenly painted as toxic, investigate why. Family bonds mean nothing without respect. Those who deliberately exclude, lie, and humiliate others will eventually face the consequences of their own cruelty. Love should never require erasing someone's dignity. You have the right to fight back against lies. You have the right to expose patterns of manipulation. You have the right to refuse to disappear quietly. Here's what you should do if you find yourself in a similar situation. First, document everything. Gather evidence of lies, of patterns, of manipulation. Truth is powerful, but only if you can prove it. Second, research the person who's isolating your child. Look for patterns in their past. Talk to their ex-partners. Understand if this is their standard behavior. Third, don't attack emotionally. Present facts, evidence, documentation. Emotional outbursts can be dismissed. Hard evidence cannot. Fourth, plant seeds with people who care about your child. You can't force your child to see the truth, but you can make sure others are watching, questioning, paying attention. And fifth, be prepared to wait. Manipulation takes time to undo. Your child may not see the truth immediately, but eventually patterns reveal themselves. Will it be painful? Absolutely. Will there be times you want to give up? Yes. Will your child come back to you? Maybe. Maybe not. But you'll know you fought for truth. I fought for Marcus. I exposed Rachel's pattern. I refused to be erased quietly. And eventually, Marcus saw the truth and came home. Somewhere in Charleston, there's a 72-year-old mother who learned about her son's wedding from Facebook photos, who documented the truth, exposed a pattern of manipulation, and planted seeds that eventually freed her son, who forgave but didn't forget, rebuilt but with boundaries. You can do the same if you need to. Don't disappear quietly. Don't accept lies. Don't let manipulators rewrite your history. Document the truth. Share it strategically. Plant seeds. Wait for harvest. Your dignity matters. Your truth matters. Your family bonds matter. Fight for them with evidence, with patience, with unwavering commitment to reality. Stand strong. Speak truth. Wait for light. Your children may come home. And when they do, you'll be there. Not because you stayed silent, but because you fought for truth. That's love. Real, lasting, powerful love.